Hey everybody, I wanted to chat a little bit today about how I got started on my writing journey because unlike a lot of authors who will say they've been writing since they were a child, that was not the background I had. Hi, I'm Gladys Strickland, fiction author of adventure thrillers under the pen name G.B. Strickland. And my writing journey is really different. I was always a reader, though, and I give huge thanks to my parents for making sure I learned to read. I had plenty of books to read, and there was never a lack of good stories around. But my writing took a different path. Most of my writing before I started writing fiction was of the academic variety because I have a master's degree in art history, so there was a lot of writing involved in that. And then several of the jobs I had, we had newsletters to send out, which back in those days was on paper, so you had to not only copyright it, but you had to format it and fit it so that it could be printed and mailed. Quite a background. But that all changed about 9 years ago. It was the summer of 2017, and I got to thinking about a lot of stories from my past, from my childhood, more little vignettes than a whole story, but it was one of those things I just wanted to write them down. I just felt this urge to get them out of me and onto paper. So I started writing them down. And then started trying to expand them and find threads that connected the story and make them longer and turn them into personal essays and doing things like that. But they didn't really work. And along the way, I realized I did not really understand the narrative arc to a story and how to make that work, which is what you find in fiction. And it wasn't a quick step going, okay, now I'll write fiction, because I had always said, I don't even know what I would write a story about. I have no ideas for a story. But that all changed in February of 2018. Let me get my date straight there. 2018, I was at the beach doing one of my morning walks, and I suddenly had an idea for a story. The background of it is when I was doing my master's degree and had to do my thesis paper, I wrote on the medieval minstrel carvings in Beverly Minster. I was living in England for a year, and Beverly was about 10 miles away. I went to the Minster lot. I looked at the carvings, did as much research as I could, started working on it. But this is my first published work. But the central question of it is there are a lot of carvings of figures playing medieval instruments in the building. In fact, it's still considered one of the best collections of medieval instruments in the world. And in the central nave, up at the top of the arcade, you have all these angels and elders playing these instruments. Not unusual to find in a church at that time. But along the north aisle wall, just above head height, are these minstrels, secular minstrel figures playing instruments. And it always fascinated me. Why are they here? Why, what, what brought about them being put into this church building? So that was kind of the ultimate topic. I was looking at the different series of carvings. I was talking about what I thought they represented and then kind of looking into why they were there. But I never could really come up with a good answer as to why they were there. So I'm walking along and I start thinking about this, and then I went, wait a minute, I could just write the story. I could make up a story of why the carvings are there. So I was probably about a third of the way through my walk. So I went ahead and finished my walk, and right as I'm leaving the beach, I've been thinking about all these ideas about showing the minstrels arriving and the work they did and how they got commissioned to do things, or they were paid and just made this up on their own, whatever. And then I went, wait a minute, that means my book's going to be set in 14th century England, historical fiction. Historical fiction isn't what I read for the most part. And I wasn't sure I wanted to delve so much into the history of that time period to be able to write an accurate reflection of the events. So I continue my walk home, and I'm thinking, and I'm like, well, what do I read? What do I grab most often? And it was adventure thrillers. So think Dan Brown, The Da Vinci Code, Angels and Demons. Think Steve Barry, The Templar Legacy. Different authors like that. Any book where you've got someone that's dealing with art or historical events in different places around the globe. There are bad guys coming at them because they've got to get this item, whatever it is, before the bad guys do, because there's some information in there that's could be used for very bad things, and they've got to save the world. So that's how I got started on the line. And that was where I started shifting. And instead of writing about medieval masons carving these minstrel figures, I decided, what if an art historian in the present day is in the minster doing her research work on the carvings and finds a mysterious symbol etched into the back of one of them? That was the beginning of the Stonemason secret. Now, let's take dates into account here. That was February of 2018. And I took, another couple of days and had just a real rough outline about what was going to happen in the book. And then I put it aside. I mean, I kind of kept thinking in my head, and every now and then I go in and do a little bit of research to try to get a little bit more information and think about a few more things. I had to decide what the MacGuffin, the object of desire that everyone's after, what was that going to be? Because I didn't want to write about something everyone else had written about. And then I researched a few other things, and I'm still writing my personal essays. I'm trying to improve my craft. But I made the decision during the summer of 2018 that I was going to participate in NaNoWriMo that year. NaNoWriMo was National Novel Writing Month, and it was always held in November, and I think it had been going on since the 90s. I know I had heard about it probably 15 years before and had known people that were participating in it, so I thought, fine, I'm going to do this. The mission is for that month to write 50,000 words. The idea is you get a first draft, or at least a good portion of a first draft of a book done. Now that equates to 1,666 words a day on average. But I decided I'm going to try doing this. So as we got into August and September, I'm doing more research, I'm plotting, I'm kind of figuring out how things go. And by the middle of October, I had the opening scene in my head. So I went ahead and started writing. But to be fair, those words, even though they were part of the book, did not count for my NaNoWriMo total. So November 1st, I get up, I had a little tablet I was writing on. I sat down and I would write for about an hour and a half every morning. And I don't think a day went by that I did not get more than the 1666 words I needed. I actually quote unquote one NaNoWriMo at the end of November, before the end of November, like November 25th, 26th. But I kept writing. I wasn't through the book. I kept writing and I kept writing. And I finished November and I went into like the middle of December before I actually was able to type the end. It felt great. There was a problem because I got to a section where that symbol that the art historian found, well, she found more. And they were clues to something. So now she has to try to put the clues together and figure out how they lead to the object, which she had learned what it was. I couldn't figure out. I thought I knew where I wanted the object to be hidden, but I couldn't figure out what the clues were and how they would lead to that location. Yeah. Looking back on it, I kind of think maybe I should have sorted that out, because I went ahead and put my art historian and a person helping her there finding it, but that wasn't where it ended up being. So after I got it finished, I had to go back in, rejigger how some of it worked, figure out what the clues were, and how they were all going to work in the story. I got that done, wrote that, did a read through of it, and was like, this isn't terrible. But looking back on it now, it's like, yeah, it was kind of bad. But it wasn't terrible in that I had the real bones of a story there. But what was missing was tension and real sense of danger and what the threat was to the world if they didn't succeed. So then I go back in and I start rewriting. So by now we're in summer of 2019. And as I record this, it is August of 2026. I have made numerous passes through, done numerous revisions. I had no idea it would take me this long. I am quite frustrated that it has taken this long, because I'm also still learning the craft of writing fiction as I'm doing this. In the summer of 2023, I joined a local writers group, and we met twice a month. Each time you could submit 10 pages, so I started submitting my writing and getting feedback, which is the first time I had gotten a lot of feedback. I had submitted a couple of chapters to different things, but now I'm actually getting real feedback on the story and the characters and all of that. Extremely helpful. So I got through the book, made a bunch of more revisions, and then a year ago, so summer of 2025, I sent my manuscript to a developmental editor. Got it back in August and started working on the revisions. And I'm still working on revisions. Well, I got through a lot of the major revisions they suggested in the winter. And I sent some more chapters back through my writers group, got good feedback on that. And so a lot of it was okay, but I keep finding there's places where things just aren't working right. So I've now got a critique partner who's fabulous. We meet every week. We read each other's writing and give feedback on it, and I'm making progress. But I was really hoping to have this book finished with the big story structure and to what's called a line editor or content editor, who goes through line by line and looks for repeated words, and if you're using the passive voice, and if you're switching points of view in the middle of a scene, and just different things like that. I really hope to have it not only to them but back from them, so I could be making those revisions to go for a proofread to get it published this fall. And now I'm like, I don't know when it's going to be out. It is so frustrating. I would love to be able to say this will be out by a certain day at the end of November. I just don't know. And I also understand that trying to release a book in December is really tricky, especially if it's not a holiday book. So right now, I'm just kind of I'm working through this as quickly as I can. Um, I've got about, I think, 7 or 8 more scenes to revise and go through with my critique part and get to the end of the book. And as I'm going along, I'm finding edits I want to make earlier in the book and changes I want to make. So I want to get all that done. And hopefully, maybe by October, I can take a week, maybe not even a week, maybe 3 or 4 days, and sit down and do a read through. Like take 2 or 3 hours every day and read through the book and get another big picture look at it, and then start looking for a content editor to send it to. I've got a couple people in mind. And again, a lot of them book up. So I may contact them November 1st. And they may not have an opening until January, especially with the holidays. And then that has to come back, and I have to revise that. And then we have to do the proofreading, which is important, and all that. The good news in all this is, when I sent my book to the editor last year, I started working on book 2. I've already got it plotted out, and I started doing a lot of the writing on it, and I'm probably close to the midpoint. It's a very rough draft, but I'm feeling really good about it, and I feel like going into it this time, I've taken care of a lot of the character development. What is the character arc going to be? And I'm writing that in on this first round. It will certainly need to be refined. It may need to be brought out more or pulled back or shifted a little, but that's not the same as not having it at all and trying to figure that out as I go. So my hope is that book 2 will come out much quicker than book 1. And I've even thought about, once I get book 1 ready to publish, how close am I to having book 2 ready? So maybe I hold off on publishing book 1 so that I can get book 2 a little closer together. So that if any readers that find it and really like book 1, they will then have a new book to read soon after that. In the meantime, I'm writing some short stories off and on. I have got a couple of them published. You can read them on Substack. The link is below. The audio version is here on YouTube, so you can listen if that is your preference. And I'm trying to do some of that along the way just to help refine my craft while also giving me a break from the manuscript, because sometimes it gets to be a little much. I have the idea for book 3 and book 4. I'm excited to get into the research for those, but I'm really trying to stay focused on getting book 1 finished as soon as possible. It has been a very humbling journey, to say the least. So for anybody that's been on my list for years, thank you for sticking around. For people that have followed me on YouTube, thank you for sticking around. The book is still coming, and the title of it is The Stonemason's Secret. If you do a search for that, it should pull up the blog posts that I have written on it. So I talk about the minstrel carvings. I talk about different medieval sites in Beverly, England, not just the Minster, but other medieval sites around. I talk about other locations in the book. So there's several English villages in East Yorkshire that my characters go to search for things in different parish churches. They also go to York Minster, so I've written about a bit about the Minster, but mainly the chapter house, which is where they're searching for clues. And I also talk about what the object of desire is. And let me just say, it is not going to be the Holy Grail. I feel like that has been done so often. Of course, when you talk about England, it would be easy to start working about the Grail. I didn't want to do that. I wanted something different. So I started doing some research on ancient objects that have a mysterious past to them, and I found one. So you can go read that on my website, or I've got the audio version of it on YouTube, and you can listen if you would rather and learn a little bit more about what it is they are searching for. So I think this is a good place to wrap up this video, talk about my writing journey. It has been quite a ride, and it is going to continue, but hopefully this part of writing and publishing my first book is drawing closer and closer to a conclusion. So I would love for you to subscribe to the channel and turn on the notifications so you know when I post new videos updating you. I talk about some of the writing involved in this. I talk about art and history, not only in my stories, but in other stories, both books and movies, and look into what's real, what's made up, and how it all blends together. I'm trying to get some more short stories done, and I'll post the audio versions of that here. And I'd just like to have more of a conversation with people that enjoy some of these topics and find out what you're interested in and thinking about. So I hope you'll join me on this journey. Until next time.